Today we're going to see if we should buy or borrow Barbara Costello's debut cookbook, Celebrate with Babs. Let's go. Celebrate with Babs. Holiday recipes and family traditions from America's most lovable grandma, Barbara Costello, also known as Brunch with Babs, and that might be how you know her. She is so famous for being your favorite internet grandma, and she came out with this cookbook. It's her first one. She did just recently come out with a second cookbook, so if you are interested in me reviewing that, let me know. I'd love to check it out, but I will have this cookbook linked below if you're interested in it after this video. Okay, so starting off strong, we've got our table of contents. Now this cookbook is so interesting because it is a cookbook that is dedicated to celebrating and hosting. So one of Babs's biggest claims to fame is that she makes hosting approachable and she makes it something that anyone can do. And so she actually organized her cookbook by different events or activities or parties that you can do. So for New Year, Super Bowl, Valentine's Day, all these different activities, she has created a whole menu, recipes, ideas around them. She really gives you this like full education, which is really cool. And then it goes beyond brunch. Obviously, she's Brunch with Babs online. So when she gets into talking about all of this here, you really learn about her background. She's half Italian, half Lebanese, and a lot of that comes through in her recipes, which is really cool. And then she talks a lot about recipes being passed down from generation to generation and how she now wants us to pass them down to you, and how all of these traditions and these experiences that she's had is her or have guided everything that she knows, but she also understands that that is not the case for everyone. So she really wanted this cookbook, and honestly, I think a lot of what she does to encourage people to start their own story, which really comes through, and I think it's really cool because I think not everyone comes from a background where you know how to host or you go to a lot of big gatherings, but if it's something that you want, she really gives you the tools to be able to cultivate that, and she goes above and beyond because it's not just recipes in the cookbook. She actually has a full tutorial basically like that you could follow where you understand how to host, and I don't think that it's overwhelming. I feel like what she's got going on in here is really helpful. I think she takes the hosting education even further with in-depth information on how to actually approach hosting with menu planning and food prep, timing your food. Like that's all stuff that a lot of people learn from elders in their family or from someone they know who's really good at hosting. So it's really interesting to have a cookbook be able to actually help teach you that. So that way, if you have no resource in your life to help you learn how to host, this is kind of like your Bible. Now, while the information is good, it's also not overwhelming. So it's definitely a great starting point to learn from. Think of it like if you only had one day with a grandmother who was the best at hosting, then this is what that book gives you. The rest is really intended to be learned by doing. Oh, there she is. Okay, so it's interesting. Obviously, each of the sections are broken out, like we said, by event or occasion, things like that. This one's New Year's Day, but I absolutely love that she puts these traditions to make your own in each of the sections. So this one says for New Year's Day to invite guests over to come in their pajamas, prepare traditional foods of good fortune, and make it a casual day with people you love, which is so cool because I think that it really sparks creativity and makes gatherings feel so special. And then it's interesting because she's saying traditional foods of good fortune, and then over here she has a good luck salad. So she's kind of trying her best to put things together with all of her suggestions. And funny enough, my family would always have lentils on New Year's Day because they also believe that it brought good luck. So it's things like that, you know, you're able to take her traditions or maybe use her cookbook and incorporate your own traditions with similar intentions. And then when she goes through all of the holidays, it's not just your classic New Year's, Christmas, Thanksgiving. She also has other holidays like Valentine's Day, which is still a formal holiday, but then there are things like birthdays, which isn't technically a holiday, but it is a gathering and it's a time that people get together. And I think that's kind of cool because some of the cookbook is seasonal. And so this is, obviously not seasonal because you can have birthdays any time of the year. And another thing that's interesting is that at the start of each section or holiday, whatever you want to call it, she always has a write-up to learn more about her. And she is a really interesting and awesome person. But since she is like an acting grandmother on the internet, it's nice that you're really getting some of these personal touches, maybe a little bit more than you would in a lot of cookbooks, because I think a big part of hosting is that kind of relationship and emotional experience, because hosting is supposed to make people feel warm and feel loved. And so getting to know the author is super important when you're learning about these kinds of things. So you understand why she chooses to do stuff a certain way and how you can potentially incorporate that into your own life, which is really cool. And then what's also interesting is that each of the sections has an on the table. So her real goal is actually to be able to plan for you. So she's planning that you can have chocolate cake, or a sprinkle cake. I think in a lot of them, they're like, make the whole section of this cookbook, and then you're able to just have all of your meals planned. But at least for the birthday one, there's a couple extra. There's, the buttercream frosting, which you can use for the cakes, and then 3 cakes and then pancake breakfast. That's obviously not going to host a birthday party. But in other sections, like, let's go to the next section. Oh, I was already going to the next section. So like in the summer barbecue, you can see that if you made all of these things for the summer barbecue, you'd be perfect. You'd be able to have people over for a summer barbecue, which is really cool. But I will say the interesting thing about the summer barbecue specifically, honestly in some of the sections, is that it's seasonal. So even though this cookbook has a lot of great recipes, you technically can't use it all year round for every specific recipe in the cookbook. But it is something you can use all the time because she has something for every season of the year, and that's her intention. Her intention is not for you to be making broccoli salad or a summer fruit salad for a crowd, in the middle of winter. And also, like, a lot of the proteins in this section are going to be grilled, and most people don't grill in the winter. But that's okay because this is now for your summer. You can make these recipes when you have a summer barbecue. So I would consider the seasonality of different sections of the cookbook to be a pro and a con. It's nice to have different things that can go all throughout the year, but it also stinks that you can't always make all of these recipes. I guess nothing's really stopping you from making a fresh peach pie in the middle of winter. I wouldn't. Peaches probably aren't that good, and honestly, you might not be able to find them. So now when it comes to the organization of the actual cookbook, one thing that I love is that she has these little Bab says. So this one says, have you ever tried crushed pineapple with your chili? It's delicious. And I just kind of love those tidbits because they feel, again, very grandma-like. This is just like a little fact or a little thought that she has that she thinks is worth sharing, and I think that's a really nice addition to the cookbook. Additionally, the make ahead sections, because when it comes to hosting, whatever you can do in advance makes the process so much easier on the day of actually hosting. And then when you're following the recipe, I just really love the organization of it. It kind of feels like how you potentially might write it out. Maybe a little tidbit up here, and then any important information, prep time, cook time, and then her directions and ingredients being separated like this is also really helpful. It's clean, it's easy to follow, and there is a surplus of photos. There's maybe only a few sections that don't have photos for every single recipe, which is definitely important to note because I am pro picture, especially when I'm not sure how to make something or what it's going to look like. It's always nice to have something to reference, even though the recipe should be good enough. Photos are, I don't know, just a win to me, I feel like. So I really liked the mix of classic and new to me items in the cookbook, specifically all of the recipes. Sometimes I feel like it's just hard to find cookbooks for recipes that are seemingly basic, like for a mulled cider. This is something that, yeah, sure, I could Google it and maybe I could find something online, but it's nice when I find it in a cookbook because I know that they spent a little longer developing this recipe. I'm sure it's been tasted a ton of times. And in this case, it's a Babs recipe that she got from her neighbor Anne when she lived in Williamsburg, which is really cool because it's something that she's made a ton of times and for a crowd, so you know it's gotta be good. And spoiler, you'll see in this video, I did make this, I didn't like it, but you'll get the full review in a few. But there are a lot of different recipes in each section, which is nice. Like this Thanksgiving section has cranberry fluff, shredded fruit, green bean casserole, which again, green bean casserole, something a lot of people know how to make, but if you're new to hosting and you want to make a Thanksgiving American classic, where do you find the recipe? It's nice that it's included in here and it's her version of it. And then you can really kind of make almost that whole section if you wanted to host, which I just think is very unique to this cookbook. I mean, even mashed potatoes, like finding a cookbook that has their chef's or that person's take on a very basic classic dish like mashed potatoes is difficult. A lot of times cookbooks, or at least new cookbooks, will give you recipes for like French onion soup, mashed potatoes, twice baked, double fried. And you're like, I just want to make good old-fashioned buttery soft mashed potatoes, and it's hard to know how to do that if you have no other resources in your life where people have just been making it and they can teach you. So this is your resource for that if that's what you want, is, you know, that grandmother that made a cookbook that now can teach you all the things that you need to know. That being said, it's not foolproof, obviously. Like, there are some recipes in here that are new. They're not traditional, but she does have a recipe for a turkey. I've not tested the turkey. I'm curious if this is foolproof for how this goes. Basically, I think that a lot of the recipes are super helpful, but it's not going to be your solution for everything because of the way that it's organized and because of the way that she is choosing to be hosting forward and then different recipes second. Now, I will say all of the sections, for the most part, are specific to a holiday. Now, technically this section is a subsection on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. I'm not positive which, but it is just for cookies. Now, I don't know who's complaining about an addition of just a bunch of Christmas cookies, but I did want to note that because all of the other sections follow this very specific hosting intention, and this one is strictly just Christmas cookies, or I guess that one had a fudge, but you know, a bunch of different recipes just for Christmas cookies. I also liked that each section had a specific icon to represent that holiday, that time of year, that gathering. So this one's a Christmas tree. And then this one's a wreath. And I really like those kinds of details. So overall, I think the cookbook is laid out very nicely. I think it seems easy to follow, but now we've got to put it through the test. So let's cook this book.
So the first recipe is sausage biscuit bites. Now, listen, I was stoked about this recipe because I was using it to entertain. I made it for a gingerbread house competition party that me and my husband hosted. Now, the thing that was interesting was why is almost the exact recipe on the back of the Bisquick box. Babs, you have some explaining to do. It was like different enough that I guess it was okay that it went in her cookbook, but I don't know. I was suspicious. Now, I made these like maybe 2 hours before people got there, and I thought that was a good amount of time and that I could reheat them, and I was so excited. And when they came out of the oven, I tried one, and I had my friend who was also visiting try one, and I thought that they were pretty good. They were like cheesy and bready and like really just like had a great flavor. Reheating though was not great, so I take that as you will. Maybe they just need to be fresh, but they didn't last very well. We did make her cider for the same event. It's a mulled cider. Delicious. It was amazing. This was so easy because you also use regular cider from the store and you just mull it with a bunch of spices. So at least that was great. The pilaf. Now, I'll let future me explain how everything goes. I will just say I was excited for this recipe. I love a good pilaf, and I was like, this is going to be something I do all the time. I am totally here for it. And then I feel like as time went on, I just like felt like I couldn't tell if it was me or if it was the recipe. But I think this was fun to try, and it's definitely encouraging me to try and make other pilafs. But I think I just need some more rules and regulations around the pilaf recipe. Also, I'm now realizing why my vermicelli noodles have a chunk taken out of them, because I went to go make them the other day and I now see myself doing that. That totally makes sense. And then I also used this hack.
It's a lot. Tablespoon? Is that tablespoon? Oh, teaspoon! Oh no. Let's put some back. I make this mistake at least once a recipe.
I guess it's not really a hack. I just used it instead of chicken broth. I obviously have messed up the measurements a little bit at first, but that, had the right amount of liquid per the rice and the vermicelli noodles. And I mean, that's helpful. Oh, it also called for pine nuts, which were optional, but I had them from all of my holiday baking. So I was excited to make a recipe that included them because I'm a big fan of pine nuts. And I would definitely put nuts in my rice dishes if I was going to spice them up, because this had pine nuts and raisins in it, which was pretty cool and really nice.
I don't know. Flavor-wise, it's really nice. I mean, I think the bouillon and or chicken stock broth, whatever you use, really brings out a lot. And I love the mix of the raisins and, everything coming together. Wet rice, too much liquid. I rinsed it. I did all the things that she said to do. It was not foolproof. So if I was gonna make this again, I would probably just do all the toasting in the pan and then just create more mess and put it in my rice cooker. Or I would just use less chicken broth. I just rice is a science. It needs to be the exact amount. And now that I think about it, it's supposed to be 2 to 1. So she added an extra half a cup for the 4th cup of vermicelli, but vermicelli need nothing to cook with. So I don't know. It might not have been me. Maybe it was the recipe. I guess if you want to make a Lebanese pilaf, just maybe cross-reference another recipe, which sort of defeats the purpose. But I do like the side dish. Or if you just have it as a bowl of rice as I do right now, I think the flavor is nice.
Then I took on a little bit of more of a challenging recipe. I made homemade manicotti, which was the first time I had ever done this. And I was only sort of intimidated, but let me tell you, I feel like this was a recipe that is a perfect date night. It is not that hard. I feel like if you have a stand mixer and a little bit of patience, you can really handle it. And it's something that you make enough of them that you kind of get better as you keep cooking, which is kind of cool, because I think sometimes you make a recipe and you have to complete the whole recipe to realize that you failed. And that's just not the case here. As long as your batter is runny enough, then when you go to cook your manicotti, you'll know whether you put enough in the pan, and you've got 10 tries to try and get a perfect crepe-like pasta. So good. It's also, as she says, truly one of the easiest pastas you can make, because you don't have to worry about rolling it out, mixing the dough, any of that stuff. And using the stand mixer is quite the hack, if you ask me.
We're facing technical difficulties. It's time for your ad break for your mozzarella cheese. Now back to your regular programming.
Probably a little too much oil on this one, but you can see the little holes.
You get this very crepe-like texture, and it's awesome. I laid them all out on parchment paper on the baking sheets. Don't know if she said to do that. I think she just said not to stack them, and I was like, oh my goodness, what do I do? So that worked best for me. The filling is very similar to a stuffed shell filling, if you've ever made that.
That looks good.
And I was excited. Once I had them all in the pan, I wanted to share, obviously. You can see all of my, I think, 10 manicotti that I made. And then you just stuff them in these log-like formations. And then once they're all done, you just got to roll them up and get them in your baking pan. And then cover it all with sauce.
Whoa. That's good. Okay. All right, this makes up for the pilaf. Let me tell you that.
Do you want to show off your special tool?
Merry Christmas! This is how I serve the manicotti. You're a mean one. Babs. All right, it's time. Should you buy or borrow? Celebrate with Babs. So, personally, I would borrow, but I will say, I think that this is a cookbook a lot of people can benefit from buying. Personally, there are a lot of recipes and like just her intention of wanting you to use a full holidays recipes to host is something that I wouldn't necessarily lean on. There are things in here I would love to make and things I would probably make again. And for that, I know I'll turn to this cookbook or I'll go to my local library and check it out, when that time comes. But generally, I don't think that it has a place on my bookshelf. If you're someone who has no traditions, you're looking to learn about hosting, you want a resource that you can lean on, and you're really kind of starting from scratch, this is the cookbook for you. And honestly, just Babs in general is the person for you. Her content leans towards that. She's very inspirational for teaching you how to make your house a home and how to celebrate and how to create that environment that is warm and brings people together, which is awesome. But for me, I think that there are a lot of recipes in here that I just might not use with the intention that she has. But a lot of the recipes that I tried were great, and I think it is an all-around very good cookbook, just not for my bookshelf. But if you are interested in buying this cookbook, I'll have it linked down below. But that's all I have for today. Thank you so much for watching. I will be sure to see you again soon. Bye for now.